Hi, I'm Dennis Edwards, Senior Pastor of the Sanctuary Covenant Church, and I want to give greetings to Woodland Hills Church. Really glad to be part of this.
And I'm Greg Boyd, Senior Pastor of Woodland Hills Church. And I want to say hello to Sanctuary. We love you guys, and it's a privilege and honor to be here today to talk about Martin Luther King with your beloved pastor. So, Dennis, what are we doing here talking about Martin Luther King in church?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I really think that it's important for us to remember that Christians have had a long history of honoring people who serve the Lord, and particularly people who gave their lives in service. I mean, martyrs, really. And in many ways, Dr. King was a martyr. So I think, Catholics and Episcopalians, they've been doing this, and some of us other Protestants need to learn that it's right to honor that person as they reflect the Lord and the values of the Lord's work and of the Scriptures.
Mm-hmm. It's not just a matter of saying, like, wow, what a great person.
Right.
But it's rather, and this has been part of the church tradition, you hold up the saints as models to emulate.
Yes.
They uniquely manifested the kingdom, and we learn by imitation. Yeah. And so it's about the message that he was for.
Yes.
And see, he got that following Jesus wasn't just about dying and going to heaven. It's rather about adopting a radical lifestyle that imitates the Lord Jesus. And he got that Jesus was about creating this one new humanity, Ephesians 2. And it's a humanity where all the walls that divide us are torn down and the chains are broken and divisions and hostilities have ended. And we now together put on display the beauty of the Imago Dei in all of our diversity. And that's what he was for. And the other thing that makes it so important is that a lot of folks, I think, a lot of white folks in particular, tend to think that when you're talking about Martin Luther King in church, you're part of a liberal agenda. Or if you're going to bring up race all the time, it's part of a liberal agenda. It's an easy way to dismiss this stuff. But they don't realize that race issues are a fundamental core part of the Bible. I mean, it's structured around that to a large degree. Starting with Babel, it was never God's ideal to have people divided into all these groups. But when the unity was working, for the worse, then it came as a judgment. But then we find with the day of Pentecost, the pouring out of the Spirit, and they're all speaking in tongues. And that was really Luke's way of letting us know that where the Spirit of God shows up, Babel's being reversed, and people are coming together. In fact, throughout the Old Testament, you find that refrain about how Yahweh wants to call all the people together, so that together will be worshing Him. He chose Israel to be the means by which He reached the whole world. So his ideal has always been to reunite humanity. And then, you have Jesus dying to create that new humanity. But even in the early church, they had trouble, working this out. The Council of Jerusalem.
Indeed. I think
how did Jews and Gentiles get together?
You're right. I think if Christians understood how strong that rift was between Jews and Samaritans and Jews and Gentiles, if they could understand that, then that language of a new humanity that Paul says in Ephesians 2, I think we would see how powerful and stark that is, because it challenges the very values that people had grown up with and were ingrained in their lives. So that's it is a good analogy to what Dr. King was dealing with in America, ways of life that have been ingrained in our country from the beginning. So when I think about Dr. King and then think about his connection to the Scriptures and the life of Jesus, there were particularly three things I thought about. It was his commitment to justice, his commitment to peace, and his commitment to love. And those are the kinds of things I wanted to talk about today.
Beautiful.
And I thought that we could focus on those topics. I mean, right away I think about Dr. King's emphasis on justice. Jesus teaches in the Sermon on the Mount, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. They will be filled. They'll be satisfied." Righteousness, that word could easily be translated justice. And justice is God's sense of what's right for His creation. It's what the Old Testament prophets were preaching about, justice. And I believe Dr. King functioned like the Old Testament prophets. In many ways, he was just like Amos. In fact, he quoted Amos many times, "Let justice roll like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream." So our world needs to know this message of justice. It's true here in our country for sure, and also in other places. I mean, people still get exploited, and we need a message of justice like King had. I mean, for example, when an unarmed person of color is killed by law enforcement, it's not surprising, really, that people of different races have different reactions to that. Generally speaking, many in the African American community, we see those shootings or chokings or other violent acts, we see it as part of our nation's long history of racial injustice. So we think about these things as justice issues.
Yeah, they are. And the way that, you talk about, you to frame it against the backdrop of a long history of that happening, and here's where I think there's a lot of the conflict results is because the black experience with regard to justice from institutions is very different from the white experience. And of course, there's exceptions on both sides, but for white folks, this country was founded by white folks and was founded for white folks. We conquered it fair and square, and from the start, we've been at the top of the pecking order, and there's been every social structure has got a hierarchy, and we've been at the top. So the average white person doesn't confront the kind of stuff that black folks do, that Native Americans do, and all these other things. It's part of the privilege of being white. We can kind of float around up here in this sort of stratosphere of privilege, and we just don't bump into the kind of things that other folks beneath us do. And so if we normalize our experience, they say this is the norm, and think that this is the norm for everybody, well then when we hear cries of folks who are saying, there's injustice going on here, there's unfairness, there's inequality, there's oppression, well, it's easy to dismiss it.
Yeah.
And we might even get angry because it kind of threatens our worldview. It's like, because a lot of white folks, frankly, aren't aware that they've got a worldview. They're not aware of the significance of being white. This is just normal. Like one person wrote me an angry letter a little while ago and said, "You keep saying I have a white perspective. I don't have a white perspective. I just see things the way they are." My response is, "Well, that is the white perspective." So what I think needs to happen is there's got to be a way for white folks, first of all, have to be willing to listen to voices and trust voices. You can't address issues of injustice if you don't think injustices are really out there. Yeah. And to develop relationships with folks. Go out of the way to develop relationships where you begin to enter into and empathize with and begin to understand a different part of America that maybe you didn't know was out there. Enter into the experiences of others. To give those voices credibility, to begin to stretch our worldviews, and our relationship be involved with one another.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that because you touched on the power of relationships and put that in the context of privilege. That's significant for me. I mean, if we're going to be this one new humanity, we've got to wrestle with notions of power, privilege, and our differences.
Absolutely.
So we need to be together. We need to be able to find ways to have conversation, dialogue, interaction. Then we can model this new humanity.